turning quite blustery under this cloud and rain too. So on the whole, it is going to be a fairly chilly day, largely dry, though we are going to see that change from the west. As we head into Thursday, any rain moving its way overnight will linger across the southeast for a time, turning slightly drier with a fair amount of cloud around, but it's going to be a very blustery day, and later on we'll see further outbreaks of heavy rain move their way in from the west with very strong winds at times. So it is going to be an unsettled end to the week and likely remaining unsettled as we head into the weekend. Bye for now.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Big problems heading southwest of Glasgow down the M74. The inside lane remains coned off at the M8 interchange where a lorry has broken down on the entry slip road. In Northamptonshire, very near the Oxfordshire border to the northeast of Banbury, the A361 remains shut in Wardington and Chipping Warden for emergency repair works. On the M6 in the West Midlands, the inside lane of 4 is closed southbound at junction 9 at Wednesbury. A crane has broken down on the entry slip road. That means there are long queues back to the M54, and in Norfolk the A10 has been closed at South Runcton. So this is just north of Downham Market, of course, at the scene of an accident. There are long queues on the M4 westbound from junction 20 to 21, from the M5 to the M48 northwest of Bristol. One lane's closed following a multi-vehicle collision, and that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
It's the biggest, greatest Great British giveaway so far, with your chance to win a spectacular £50,000 in tax-free cash. 2025 could be amazing, with plenty of treats, holidays and fun on the horizon. How would you enjoy that cash? £50,000 will make someone our biggest ever winner. For your chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What a joyous, festive opening now. Welcome to Farage with me, Martin Dawdby, standing in for the big man himself, Nigel Farage, who is currently in Parliament fulfilling his duty as an MP, but we're expecting him to home interview shortly. Until then, you'll have to make do with me. Now, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has delivered a firm message to incoming US President Donald Trump, making it clear that his government will not take sides against the European Union, if you believe that. But is that the case? Should he do that? And a new revelation today shows that 69% of asylum claims have not been made by the arrival of small boats, which begs the question, where the hell are these people coming from? And it's set to be a record year for wind power in the UK, at least in terms of how much goes to waste. Should the government stop blowing money, £1 billion a year, on these wind power grids? And that's all come in first. Nigel Farage on his way, but before all of that, here's your headlines, and it's Lewis Mackenzie.
Thank you very much, Martin. Good evening. It's just after 7 o'clock. Here are your latest headlines from the GB newsroom. The president of South Korea has declared martial law to protect the country from North Korean forces. But now we're hearing that South Korea's parliament has just voted to block the president's declaration. In a surprise live television address, Yoon Suk-yeol says the move was necessary to remove pro-North Korea elements and safeguard the country's constitution. It comes as the president accused the nation's opposition of controlling the parliament, sympathising with North Korea and paralysing the government with anti-state activities. But now the South Korean Parliament Speaker says the martial law declaration is invalid. These are live pictures from the capital, Seoul, where large crowds are gathering outside the National Assembly as soldiers and military vehicles have been seen surrounding the building. Downing Street says it's closely monitoring developments in South Korea, and UK nationals are advised to monitor travel updates. MasterChef presenter Greg Wallace is facing fresh allegations of inappropriate sexual behaviour after he stepped down from the show last week. The BBC are reporting that one woman is claiming that Mr. Wallace touched her bottom at an event, and another says he pressed his crotch against her while filming on a different show. His lawyers have strongly denied he engages in behaviour of a sexual harassment nature. This comes as 2 Christmas MasterChef specials have been pulled from the BBC's festive lineup. We'll, of course, keep you updated on that developing story throughout the evening. So Keir Starmer says the UK won't choose between America and Europe, insisting both alliances are crucial in dangerous times. Speaking at the Lord Mayor's banquet in London, the Prime Minister rejected claims the UK must pick sides, pledging to deepen ties with the US while rebuilding relations with Europe.
The idea that we must choose between our allies, that somehow we're with either America or Europe, is plain wrong. I reject it utterly. Attlee did not choose between allies. Churchill did not choose. The national interest demands that we work with both.
In other news, the fate of the Elgin marbles remains in the hands of the British Museum after the Prime Minister and his Greek counterpart failed to discuss the sculptures. When asked, a spokesperson confirmed the government has no plans to change the law, leaving the decision to the museum's trustees. It remains unclear if a loan agreement will be reached for the iconic pieces. 5 members of an organised crime group that smuggled 2.7 tonnes of cocaine in a shipment of bananas have been jailed. They were arrested by organised crime partnership officers at an industrial estate in Tottenham in February of 2021, after receiving 41 pallets of bananas into which the cocaine had been stored. The drugs had different branded stamps on them, which corresponded to particular organised crime groups that were going to sell them on the streets of London and wider parts of the UK. The drugs would have had an estimated street value of £210 million. And radio presenter Fern Cotton has revealed that she will undergo surgery to remove 2 benign tumours on her jaw.
I've got a benign tumour just in my jaw here below my ear, another little tiny one above it. I'm very grateful they're benign, but they do need to come out.
The presenter explained on social media that she'd been told the growing masses were benign but needed to come out as they were pressing on her salivary glands. In the video, she also thanked Davina McCall for her support, who recently also shared her experience of a benign brain tumour. Well, those have been your latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Lewis Mackenzie. There's more from me in an hour's time.
Thank you, Lewis. Now, until Nigel arrives, I'm here. Let's get cracking. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has delivered a firm message to incoming US President Donald Trump, making it very clear that his government will not take sides against the European Union. If you believe that, you might believe in Santa. Now, this comes after allies of the president-elect reportedly urged the Labour leader to choose between Washington and Brussels. Speaking at the Lord Mayor's banquet in London last night, Keir pledged to strengthen ties with both the US and the European Union, emphasising his commitment to building bridges on both sides of the Atlantic. And this is what he had to say during that address.
The idea that we must choose between our allies, that somehow we're with either America or Europe, is plain wrong. I reject it utterly. Attlee did not choose between allies. Churchill did not choose. The national interest demands that we work with both.
Well, there we have it. And with a potential trade war looming, is it time for the UK to get off the fence, a place where Keir Starmer, let's face it, feels pretty comfortable, and pick a side? Well, joining me now to discuss this is David Hennig, the director of the UK Trade Policy Project. David, welcome to Farage. So a decision awaits. Do you think it's for the birds, the notion that Keir Starmer can please Brussels and Washington? Donald Trump can barely conceal his contempt for Brussels, and at some point he will want Keir Starmer to make a choice. Now, my instinct tells me that the Europhile, the guy who headed up the People's Vote for 3 years, Keir Starmer, he will choose Brussels. What say you?
Well, actually, I think that on this occasion, Keir Starmer might be able to stay more or less on the fence. This is not new. I mean, I've been around a bit. I've heard so many times that the UK is going to go more towards America. It's going to go more towards Europe. You're right. You're hearing all these all the Remain campaigners. Oh, this is the great moment. Keir Starmer's going to choose the EU. I don't think he is, actually, and I don't think he's going to choose the US. You're going to have to do a bit of ducking and weaving because, let's face it, Trump's going to have a go at quite a few people. Not sure he's going to have that much of a go at us. To be honest, we're pretty low down his priority list. And if I'm a successful business, I'm not, sadly, but if I was, I'd be saying, sure, I want to do business with the US and with the EU as well. So let's do what we can to make that happen.
Yeah, but Donald Trump isn't like previous presidents, and we know he's on a bit of a warpath. For example, tariffs is his favourite word. What happens, for example, if he lays tariffs, particularly on the European Union? The automotive industry there is already hemorrhaging billions of euros. Volkswagen, Mercedes, BMW, they are in dire trouble because of net zero targets. Donald Trump is drill, baby drill. What if he puts tariffs on the table to the EU and they impact the United Kingdom? What we could have is a Prime Minister that would do a beautiful bespoke trade deal with the US. Look at the numbers. 8 US states combined $7.326 billion in export deals. That's more than the entire 27 member states. Texas is bigger than all member states apart from Germany and France. The boom time is the other side of the Atlantic in Washington. The doom time is in Brussels.
If Trump wants to do us a deal on the same basis that we've already got a deal with the EU, he takes away all the tariffs on both sides, fine, take it. If he wants to give us conditions, like we turned down the conditions that the EU wanted to give around that, no. But actually, I'm not actually sure Trump is that bothered about those kinds of deals. Most of the trade we do with the US is actually in services. Great. I think that will carry on. What are the kinds of goods we're selling? You talk about the car makers. What are the cars that we're actually selling to the US? We're selling them luxury and premium cars, which, to be honest, tariffs will affect a bit. But to be honest, if you're buying a McLaren, you're not that bothered about an extra 10% tariff. Or I'm assuming so. I've never bought a McLaren, but it strikes me that you're not too worried about the extra 10%. Europe's car industry, yeah. You've got problems there, Volkswagen. We can see the problems, but the UK, to be honest, we are moving into a different space. We're moving into a premium space. I think we're pretty well placed, actually. I mean, I'm kind of feeling at the moment like too many of the media, the commentators, the usual suspects are trying to talk up, this is going to be terrible for the UK economy. Oh, we do love it. We do love a good crisis. We do love a good panic. I don't see the panic. I actually think we're not badly placed here. And we, you can't have it all. We'll have to make a few choices. But I think we can avoid the worst of this. And if we can do more trade with the US, great. If we can do more trade with Europe, great. Let's just try to do that, because that's historically what we've always tried to do.
What about, David, on other things? I mean, maybe the Americans might all be queuing up to buy a brand new pink Jaguar. I mean, that could dig us out of a hole. I don't think so. What about other things? Like, for example, Ukraine, NATO targets. There are many, many leverage points that Donald Trump holds the ace hand on. And the European Union, they're forlornly pursuing their own military project. They're forlornly pursuing net zero targets, which are total loggerheads with the United States. Drill, baby, drill. Low tax environment, self-sufficiency in sovereign energy. That's surely the partner we should be with. But we have a Prime Minister who seems ideologically tied to Brussels.
We're going to be spending more on defence. I'm pretty sure about that. And it won't just be the UK and Europe spending more on defence. You see what Poland is spending on defence. And by the way, Poland's economy is going great guns. Maybe I shouldn't use that phrase with defence, but there will be countries that we're doing good business with in the EU. Fine. If the US economy is going great guns, and the good news is that our trade with the US is doing fine as well. But it's not what we're selling to them is not necessarily what people think it is. Surprisingly enough, we probably will sell some pink Jaguars into the US. I don't know. If you've been to Los Angeles recently, they'll probably love it there. But maybe in some other states, they might prefer the kind of that black look of the Elon Musk cars instead. I think we can find a way through that. I know you're trying to take sides. You're trying to get me to take sides. Maybe the other way. Maybe whichever way you are. I just refuse to do it. I want to sell pink Jaguars to California, sell jet black Jaguars to Texas, and whatever we can sell. We'll have to make a few choices. We're going to have to spend more on defence. That I am absolutely sure about. And Europe as a whole is going to have to up its spending, and that is going to be one of the big discussions that is going on. But is that a hardship for us to do that? We've got to do that.
Well, it might be a hardship for the European Union economies. They're on the verge of breaking down. We're seeing the German government going to collapse, the French government going to collapse. Where are they going to find all these billions to meet their Euro targets, their NATO targets, beg your pardon? That is a separate conversation. David Hennig, I admire your glass half full optimism at Christmas. The idea that Americans will all be swanning around in pink Jaguars to save our bacon this side of the pond is magnificent. Thank you very much for joining us on Farage tonight. Thank you very much. Now let's continue this chat back in the studio with my wonderful panel. That's Joe Phillips, the former press secretary to Paddy Ashdown, and Ranil Jadawardena, the former Conservative MP and Minister. Welcome to the show. Joe, I'm going to start with you. You're a Europhile. You probably share quite a lot of the symptoms of that, as it were, with Sir Keir Starmer. I just think this notion that Sir Keir Starmer can juggle plates and keep Brussels happy and keep Washington happy is for the birds. You'd have to make a choice at some point. The point is, what do you make what's best for Britain or what's best for Brussels?
I think David is absolutely right, and I think Keir Starmer can. He doesn't have to make a choice, and he certainly doesn't have to make a choice right now. But you mentioned NATO and Ukraine. Well, that is a European problem. NATO, admittedly, is a problem that may become a bigger problem because of what President-elect Trump might do or might not do when he takes office in January. But we've got a war on mainland Europe. So the idea that we would suddenly go, oh, no, we're going to throw all our eggs into the basket of Trump and ignore our relationship with Europe.
But that's the key point, because Donald Trump wants to end the war perhaps in a way that Keir Starmer won't like.
Well, and probably Zelensky and probably Poland and probably all those places that would be next in Putin's march across Europe. So I think, on defence, on immigration, we have got to have closer links with Europe, and we've got to rebuild that. And I don't think that it's impossible to have good relations with both blocs. And I think Keir Starmer's absolutely right. Churchill didn't have to choose, Thatcher didn't have to choose, Attlee didn't have to choose.
Yeah, but Donald Trump might make us choose.
Well,
Donald Trump is no Reagan.
Donald Trump is no Reagan, for sure. Donald Trump is Elon Musk's useful idiot, if you ask me.
Strong words, there we go. OK, Renaud, let's bring you in. Do you think that this is a tightrope act? You know, Sir Keir Starmer, he's fallen off the tightrope act on so many occasions so far, over winter fuel allowance, over the farmers' protest. The idea he can keep Donald Trump happy and also keep them happy in Brussels is for the birds.
Well, to govern is to choose, and he will have to make tough decisions. It is possible to have a good working relationship with the EU and a good working relationship with the US, but you've got to go after it. You know, the deal that was secured with the EU, as David, who, by the way, I thought was on very good form, if the deal that was negotiated with the EU was also on the table with the US, then great, because it's the first entirely tariff-free deal the EU has secured with anyone else, and vice versa, the first deal that they offered anyone else. But to get that with the US, Sir Keir Starmer is going to have to actually actively go after it, build relationships, demonstrate that it's in the US's interests as much as it is in Britain's. And there's a really important point also, which is that outside of any bloc right now, including outside of the EU, we have a unique opportunity. If there is to be this big trade war, tariffs rising everywhere, we have a unique ability to position the UK as a great place to do business. So it's totally up to him. The ball is in his court.
What about this? Elon Musk, who's going to be the Department of Government Efficiency for Donald Trump. What about if he, I don't know, finds $100 million to throw towards the UK to try and influence our politics, perhaps slips it towards Reform UK? That might sour relationships, will it not, with Sir Keir Starmer?
Well, you know, fundamentally, he's got to govern in the national interest. You know, corporate donations are really tightly regulated in the UK. Interestingly, donations from the unions are far less regulated in the UK. So if he wants to tighten anything up, he'll need to think very carefully about having a level playing field for everyone. But I think the important thing here is this is more than about his party or mine or anyone else's. It's about making sure that British businesses can succeed in a global economy, and having freer trade with the US is definitely a good thing.
And don't forget, he did go and meet Trump, you know, and he has said it was a very convivial meeting with David Lamb. Yes, I know, but I mean, he was the first person who spoke to Trump after Trump's assassination.
Donald Trump's in Paris this weekend with Emmanuel Macron, his first
Emmanuel
European leader.
Macron might not be in government for very much longer if the way things are going in France.
A separate point. Joe Phillips and Renaud, thank you very much, because guess what? Nigel Farage is back in the building. He's fulfilled his parliamentary requirements. I'm just a mere warm-up act. The Rod Stewart of politics is about to walk in. The main event coming up next. Nigel asked that question. 69% of asylum seekers did not come across in small boats. So how on earth did they get here? These are the questions that Nigel Farage has been asking the government. More on that soon with Nigel Farage.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's a time for the vegan community to get together, as well as an opportunity for non-vegans to try going plant-based.
Well, joining us now is from her delicious hummus. We both love hummus. This is a great thing. This is the founder of Chickpea, Hannah McCollum. Hannah, lovely to meet you. And you've brought in some of your beautiful products in front of you here. So can you talk us through some of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a range of chilled hummus, and then latest to the range of a new ambient snack pot, which is a fridgeless hummus that doesn't require refrigeration. But I started Chickpea because of my love for hummus, but also sustainability and reducing food waste and encouraging people to be more plant-based without saying go vegan.
Does normal, say, traditional hummus have anything that's not vegan appropriate in it?
Not really.
No.
I think
it's always chickpeas, olive oil, maybe some other bits.
Yeah, lemon juice, aquafibre or water to help with the consistency, garlic, and rapeseed oil or olive oil.
And there's a bit of a misconception about veganism that I hear a lot, where people say, look, I'm not a vegan, I love my steaks, I'll just get out of there now. But there's a misconception that you don't get the protein, you don't get the fats, and you're kind of just eating processed salads and, fake meat and things. But that's not quite the case, especially with chickpeas, right?
Yeah, I think protein is really important, and actually a lot of people think I need a certain amount of fish every week or meat, but actually a lot of the fish and meat that you're eating are eating higher protein foods, so algae, seaweed, pulses, all these types of plant-based foods. For me, veganism is like you could have a delicious rye seeded bread with just loads of roasted vegetables, seeds, tahini sauce on top. That sounds and there's nothing beige in there at all.
GB News, the People's Channel. Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good evening. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was terrible. If you believe that, you'll believe anything. I was actually voting at the House of Commons. Now, let's get serious for a moment. Yesterday, the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, was really going for the Tories, saying 906,000 net in 2023 was shameful. And I'm not sure the Conservative Party had much of an answer to it. But I had looked at something else, and that was the asylum numbers and by what route they'd entered the UK. This was part of my question and part of her answer.
Everyone talks about the small boats, and yet 69% of that 84,000 did not come across the English Channel in boats. Can she tell me, please, where did they come from? Were they overstayers? Were they student visas? Who were the 69%?
The previous government's decision to remove visa requirements for visitors had led to a significant increase in asylum applications for people who were coming as visitors instead. We have reversed those changes that were made by the previous Conservative government and reintroduced visitor visa requirements for those countries.
Now, normally the Labour government are very good at completely ignoring any question I asked, and yet that looked to me to be quite a substantive response. I have followed it up with a written question to ask which are the countries, but I do think it's quite shocking, isn't it? We think about the small boats, the tens of thousands of young men every year crossing the Channel, but 69% did not come by that route. Alt Mehmet, chairman of Migration Watch, joins me and the panel. Alt, I literally was shocked by that number.
Really, Nigel, I wouldn't have been, to be honest.
You calling me naive?
I'm not calling you naive, but no one is an expert on the minutiae of Home Office figures.
Well, you are, and that's why you're here.
And the fact is that the majority of those who claim asylum do it at the point where they're uncovered. Those who arrive here and overstay, they arrive for a few weeks, they come here as students. There are even those who are in prison for years and are going to be released and removed, and they claim asylum at that point. We've had 150,000 since 2018 coming here just across the Channel. We have no idea what has happened to that 150,000. So it really is appalling.
So is she right? Is the Home Secretary right when she says, and she was very specific, that the last government removed visa restrictions from a number of countries and that's why the numbers went up?
It's possible that may have had some effect. For example, Colombia, I mean, they're about to reintroduce visa restrictions. The idea is that on the advice of the Foreign Office, they say, look, this is not a problem. And the Home Office also comes up with figures that suggests that particular countries are not a problem, therefore remove visa restrictions. But I think that they're being naive when they do that. Young people coming here from quite often desperate circumstances, no education, no jobs.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that overall the country is safe. The fact is that they will come here and they will want to stay by hook or by crook.
But there are over 100 countries in the world where homosexuality is still illegal. So anyone can come on holiday and say, I can't come back because I'll be discriminated against. What can we do about this?
Well, we could start by looking at the Human Rights Act, which embeds the ECHR into our law. That needs serious revision. The Human Rights Act, frankly, if you've got someone coming here who is destitute, then by law you've got to provide accommodation for them. If you've got someone who's here and can't be returned to their country because of potentially how they're going to be treated, you can't send them back
We need
there.
to amend it and change
So we need to amend the Human Rights Act.
Ranul, I mean, are you hanging your head in shame over what happened, and just in 2023, let alone the other years?
Well, as you said, we need some of the detail on the countries that they're actually going to deal with. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, though, that there is a problem that needs to be solved around the huge number of people who are coming to this country and claiming asylum, including, I'd contend, a lot of people who are claiming asylum as economic migrants, but with a, I'm sorry to say, fabricated cover story. That gets in the way of a load of people who might well need our help. And this country's always been a country that has wanted to provide help to those in need. And, the conventions that we've signed in the past say that those people who fear and have a genuine fear for their lives or to have all of their rights deprived permanently, those are the categories of people who should be supported. So we need to tighten up our own interpretation of the Geneva Convention.
You had 14 years to do this. You promised us in 3 consecutive manifestos, if we just move back to legal migration for a minute, you promised us net migration of tens of thousands a year. You gave us nearly 1 million in 1 year.
So, as you say...
Is it shameful?
As you say, those are different issues.
Is it shameful?
I am disappointed that...
so it's not shameful?
I'm disappointed that...
You're disappointed?
I'm disappointed that migration
furious.
is as high as it is. But I'd say that actually the illegal migration, which is what you were talking about, and the asylum claims, which is what you were talking about in the House of Commons, those are the things that we've been trying to focus on, and Labour has scrapped the proposals we had. The Rwanda scheme...
that went well, didn't it?
Well,
2 years. Come on, for goodness. You're having a laugh.
Hang on. The Rwanda scheme,
you can't keep a straight face.
We've got it lined up, and Labour have scrapped it. And what are other countries in Europe doing?
Do you know what?
They're adopting exactly that.
Do you know what? The idea the planes were going off in July, if the planes were leaving in July, he would not have called an election. Joe, from the Liberal Democrats, centre-left of politics, human rights, international law, these have always been fundamental things.
Absolutely.
Part of your belief system. And yet when you hear Alp talk about the way in which human rights are now being abused, do you have some second thoughts on this?
No, I don't have second thoughts, but I do think, and you're quite right, Nigel, to lay the blame very squarely at the door of the Conservative
But it's not blame because you agree with this policy. You agree with letting lots of people in.
don't agree with what the Conservatives did, which have...
But you want more.
What happened when we left Europe? All of a sudden, immigration...
But you want more immigration.
Not necessarily more immigration, but you do need to look at how you control it. And what happened after Brexit was that all of a sudden, all those people who were coming and going across EU countries, whether they were Polish plumbers or Romanian nurses or whatever they were, that a lot of those people decided to stay, so they sought settlement. So that put the figures up. We've now got masses of people coming in. I think it's something like 36% of people working in the health service are from Africa. You've got people coming from Africa, you've got people coming from India, you've got people coming from the Philippines. But you support that, just to be clear? We haven't got people in this country.
I mean, you can argue about it.
You don't want to blame us for it, because you agree with it.
But I tell you what I do blame all of you for. The fact that this narrative, and I'm going to come back to Alp and finish this segment off, this narrative that immigration is good because they're all coming here to work. I've looked at the figures. Of the last couple of million that came, only a fifth are working.
Well, We've known for years and years, Nigel, that overall net migration of the sort of numbers that we've had in the past, which were much lower than they are now, it's been a net fiscal cost. Those costs have gone up.
Let's put this in simpler English. It's making us poorer.
It's making, yes, if you look at GDP per head, the money in our pockets, I'm afraid that's flatlined for many, many years, and recently it has actually been reducing.
But what about the people who are coming here to work, to do jobs that
One in five of those that have been allowed in work. That, I mean, I tell you what, that is shameful.
Well, and also, yes, you know, and
it is shameful.
If you speeded up the asylum process, a lot of those people actually would be able to work and contribute.
That may be true and it may not. But of those that have legal, I mean, and it's difficult with this because we have illegal and legal, and we're debating both. But even of the legal, only 1 in 5 are working. Our final thought, is any of this going to change under this Labour government?
Well, we haven't heard anything that's going to remotely change it. If anything, what has happened so far is going to increase numbers. But, Nigel, we are at a phenomenal scale of immigration at the moment. 900,000... everyone clapped when they said, oh, it's only 740,000 to year to June. However, at 600,000 net annual, we're talking about 20 million people more added to our population by the mid to late 40s. That's a phenomenal amount.
I know. Alp, thank you. During Advent, as we count down to Christmas Day, we are hearing from church ministers across the country. Each day, they've got a special message for you to celebrate the festive season.
The GB News Advent Calendar, Day 3.
I'm the Reverend Mike Milmine, and welcome to St Leonard's Church in Denton, where I'm priest in charge. What is the real meaning of Christmas? Well, with everything so commercialised nowadays, I often find myself tempted to say, Grinch-like, stop. It is not about tinsel, it is not about Brussels sprouts, it is not about expensive presents. And there would be truth to that thought. But what if the real meaning of Christmas really is the giving of a gift? The giving of the gift by God the Father of Jesus, his Son, to the world. The giving of that gift to you. Most of us are so excited to open all our gifts on Christmas morning. But it's interesting that the giving of gifts is always a two-way transaction. Gifts are given, but in order to be enjoyed, gifts must also be received. And so enjoy any gifts that you receive this Christmas. But don't fail to receive the greatest gift of all. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish, but have eternal life.
And you can see all of our special Advent messages as Christmas approaches by visiting gbnews.com/Advent. In a minute, let's talk Chagos. Yeah.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head into tomorrow, it's going to be another chilly start, turning wet and windy from the west, but elsewhere there should be plenty of hazy sunshine to go around. We've currently got high pressure sitting out to the east, clinging on before we start to see a change from the west as a frontal system moves in, bringing a squeeze in the isobars too, so fairly blustery at times across the northwest of Scotland. Any rain generally fizzling out as that system moves its way south and eastwards, bringing in some clouds, still perhaps a slight bit of rain across parts of Wales, but generally turning clearer to the north of this, a few showers to the far north of Scotland, but with clear skies we're likely to see some frost by the morning. We may even see some icy stretches just to the north and east of Scotland, so do take care if you're out and about during the early hours of Wednesday morning. But otherwise there's going to be plenty of bright sunshine around, even though it is going to be a cold start. Similar across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, chilly, but it is going to be largely dry. Perhaps a bit more cloud across central and southern areas, still a chance of a some light rain across parts of Wales, mainly across hills. But for most of us, it's going to be a largely dry day, plenty of sunny spells to go around. We'll eventually see a change from the west, though. More clouds spilling in here, some outbreaks of rain, this turning heavy at times, just moving into parts of Northern Ireland, western parts of Scotland by the afternoon, and turning quite blustery under this cloud and rain too. So on the whole, it is going to be a fairly chilly day, largely dry, though we are going to see that change from the west. As we head into Thursday, any rain moving its way overnight will linger across the southeast for a time, turning slightly drier with a fair amount of cloud around, but it's going to be a very blustery day, and later on we'll see further outbreaks of heavy rain move their way in from the west with very strong winds at times. So it is going to be an unsettled end to the week and likely remaining unsettled as we head into the weekend. Bye for now.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News,
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the Chagos deal is crumbling. Have a quick look at what I had to say in the House of Commons yesterday.
Been contacted by very senior officials and advisors from the incoming Republican administration, and every single one of them is appalled at this deal. Hasn't the time come for the government to admit this is a rotten deal for the UK, a rotten deal for America, and an even worse deal for the Chagosians? And if you care so much about the sovereignty of the Falklands being in the hands of the Falkland Islanders, why not have a referendum of the Chagosians and ask them to settle who should have sovereignty over those islands?
I found it, Joe, bizarre that governments stand up and say Gibraltar will be British if the Gibraltarians want to be. The Falklands, as long as they... And yet these poor Chagosians, who had a rotten deal of it.
Well, they had a rotten deal from us originally. You know, we forcibly removed them, plonked an American airbase with our blessing on the island, and this deal to hand the islands back to Mauritius.
Not back, they'd never had them.
Well, to hand it over to Mauritius, is actually something that I think has for a very long time been a problem for your previous government and going back a bit, and it has come up against international law, which is my understanding. I mean, James cleverly started the negotiations.
So the International Criminal Court gave a ruling, but it was advisory only.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and then there was it even goes back to Theresa May's time, because I think there was a UN thing on it. I mean, I think at the end of this, the Chagosian people
should have a say.
Absolutely.
And they are
not all by all means united.
They not united. They're almost unanimous, because when all this happened those years ago, they are basically Creole. That's what they speak, and that's what they are. They would, when they went to Mauritius, when we removed them from Diego Garcia, they were treated by the most appalling racism, and they want. I've spoken to their leaders. They say, we accept Diego Garcia, it's happened, it's not going. But the other islands can be settled. We want to go back to our homelands, but we want to do it under British rule.
Yeah.
I mean, Labour, the hypocrisy of Labour on this.
No, you're absolutely right. And given that the deal that Labour has negotiated, this supposedly great deal, allows for the other islands to be settled.
All they've done is pretty much rubber stamp the deal that had started.
No, that's fundamentally not correct.
Well, I think James cleverly has a role in this.
He did.
Cleverly started it after the court. He needn't have done that, in my view.
Not so cleverly, some would say.
He needn't have done that, in my view. David Cameron, stopped it in its tracks. I think that's something we'd both agree with.
He did.
And unfortunately, under the Labour government, they've now signed it all off, rubber-stamped everything that the Mauritian government could have asked for, all to help them in an election that they lost in Mauritius. Anyway, that's by the by. The point here is this supposedly great deal that Labour have negotiated allows the other islands to be used by the Mauritius government, and on that basis, there's no reason why they couldn't be then used by the Chagossians themselves.
And the incoming American administration is clearly going to be hostile to this deal. And whatever we think of Trump, whether we love him or have problems with him, our military relationship with them is key, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and they have got the guarantee of still maintaining the airbase.
No, well, they haven't really.
99 years.
Well, here's the problem, Joe. We had the 50-year deal over Hong Kong, and it's gone.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And that's the real worry.
But I think, you know, to go back to the people at the very root of this, who are the Chagossian Islanders, who are not...
Which is why I raised their case.
And a lot of them are in this country. Now, where would they then be? Would they then have to be deported back? Or will they have the right to stay here? Because we removed them. We forcibly removed them.
We did in 2020 make amends to the Chagossians by offering them British citizenship. But they really have a very pragmatic situation. They want to go back to the islands. They want to settle the nearest island. They accept Diego Garcia. There are flights that go from Diego Garcia to Singapore, which would allow civilians to get on and off the islands. It wouldn't be easy, but possible. I just think it was a great compromise here, and I think, actually, I believe we can right a wrong that we committed all those years ago.
Yeah, and I think there are very, very mixed views on this from lots and lots of people, and I think the Mauritian Prime Minister has called for an independent review of the deal. And I think we have to sort of see what happens, but it might be something that needs to be revisited because you can't right a wrong by making the future worse for the people that you're trying to.
Well, as far as the Chagossians are concerned,
that's what I mean.
And their leaders, what has been proposed is even worse than we have now.
Well, that's exactly what I mean.
So it needs to change.
But you're righting a wrong of what we did in the first place.
What Labour are doing is making it even worse.
I know. I think that's right. Thank you, guys. Quick thought from me at the end of this. Hell of a row breaking out over rainbow armbands in the Premier League. And we've got, the Crystal Palace defender. He's written "I love Jesus" on it. We've got a Muslim player for Ipswich who refuses to wear it. And I just think, it's a personal view, but all sport, should try to be, when it's on the pitch, as apolitical as it possibly can be. Thank you to our panel for coming in this evening. In a moment, we are going to have a debate about the £1 billion a year we pay to wind companies not to produce energy. We'll have an advocate for green energy and somebody who's very sceptical. All of that in a couple of minutes.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
The birth rate in Britain has sunk to 1.49, well below replacement rate. Yet policies pursued by both major parties are still to spend huge sums to encourage parents back to their work when their children are still at preschool age. Should we not be helping parents to spend longer at home, asks his new book, whilst recognising that in an age of sex equality, the question is fraught. David Goodhart joins me now.
We undervalue the domestic realm, and that has led to lots of the most negative trends in British society. About half of children in the UK are not living with both of their biological parents by the age of 14. We have, of families with dependent children, about 24-25% are single-parent households. Mainly mothers, and they're doing, valiant work. But of course, it means you don't have the investment in children that a two-parent family can give. I mean, the reason why it's a care dilemma is that a lot of these negative trends are also kind of intimately related to positive things, like that movement of women into work, the fact that women are no longer so defined by marriage and motherhood, the fact that women and men are freer to leave unhappy relationships. And the challenge for modern liberal societies is, how we hold on to those freedoms but get a better balance, which means, I think, investing more in the domestic realm. We spend a total now of £9 billion on childcare subsidies. Why not give that subsidy direct to young parents so they could then choose whether to subsidise themselves, as it were, to be able to afford to stay at home, or to give it to a nursery, or to give it to granny, or to keep it in the home.
GB News.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's a very big year for wind power. It's a very big year, actually, for the wind power that goes to waste, because we're paying up to £1 billion this year to wind energy companies not to produce electricity because the wind is blowing too consistently and we don't need it. And then at other times, of course, when the wind doesn't blow, we rely on imports from Europe or we have to use gas. Is the whole thing a colossal waste of money? Well, I've got with me two advocates, one for, one against, and both very passionate. Donica McCarthy, Director of the Climate Media Coalition, and Ross Clark, Energy Policy Journalist and deep sceptic. Ross, is this right? We actually pay lots of money to foreign companies who have wind farms in the North Sea not to produce electricity?
This is absolutely right. They're called constraint payments, and they're essentially compensation for when wind farm owners are told, sorry, it's too windy, you're generating too much power, the national grid can't cope, so you have to turn it off. But we'll pay you as if you were generating the power anyway. And this is the inevitable consequence of energy policy, which has incentivised the construction of wind and solar farms, these intermittent forms of energy, without ever solving that intermittency problem and without beefing up the national grid so the wires are able to cope.
I mean, there's a point there, Donna, isn't there? I mean, you know, this is intermittent energy, and you and I have discussed this on the programme before. I mean, there could be a way, couldn't there, by massively building infrastructure on the national grid, that perhaps we could harness this, but the cost of that would far outweigh that energy.
Ross was right. There is a national grid problem. This is a good news story and a bad news story. The good news is we're producing so much cheap green energy that we actually have excess at times. The second is, the bad news story, is the national grid is a privatised utility. They make $4 billion a year profit for shareholders, and they have failed to build a national grid to get cheap energy to the consumer in the south. Now, what the government is doing, which I think is correct, is they have actually speeded up the building of 2 sea cables from Scotland to the south of England. And what that will do is bring that excessive energy down to the south where we need it.
Which would cost cheap. But that would cost a lot of money.
Whichever way we go with energy, we will have to invest in new infrastructure. The question is, do we invest in the new infrastructure or the old? Now, NESO has actually looked at it, and yes, there are increased costs in moving to build this new infrastructure. But over the next 8 years, 2 things will come down. First of all, we won't have to be buying gas, which is the most expensive.
Hang on. Donna, let me just stop you for a moment.
Sure.
If we don't have gas, we're knackered. Because when we get a big anticyclone in February over the country, the great thing with gas is you can switch it on and switch it off. We're going to need gas for decades.
I have no problem saying that we will need gas as backup. But the more gas we use, the more expensive it is for consumers, because the electricity price in the United Kingdom is set by gas, and we are vulnerable because of the amount of gas we use. So NESO has said, as we produce more wind turbines and we get these cables in, the price of electricity will go down because we will be paying less for gas. So that will be a win-win.
Ross, I mean, one of the things here, of course, is, I mean, pylons like we can't believe from sort of, almost up near Newcastle, right down to the Thames estuary. But this cheap power, the advocates of this, Red Ed, Miliband, Donoghue, they keep talking about cheap energy. All I look at is the fact we have more renewable energy than any of our Western world competitors, by some margin, particularly wind, yet our electricity prices for industry are the highest in the world. Our domestic energy prices are 30% more than France, at least double what they are in America. Is this cheap energy actually going to come in the next few years?
Well, no, basically. I mean, what you've hit upon is that this, the difference. Wind energy, we're all told, is cheap, and yet we have this very wind-heavy electricity mix in Britain, and yet we have the highest electricity prices in the world. And the reason is because you look at the price of incorporating wind energy and solar energy into the grid. You can't just look at the price of generating the electricity itself, where the marginal cost is very, very low. You've got to take into account the storage costs, the backup costs, and what you do when the wind isn't blowing, the sun isn't shining. That's why it gets so expensive.
You know very well the reason why the United Kingdom's electricity price is that it is that the electricity price is set by the most expensive electricity. What is the most expensive electricity? It's gas. And that's hammering us. And one thing I think would be really good. How do we bring prices down?
Why do we pay out for wind energy on the last price for gas? Why do we do that?
We do it because during a storm like Bert, we're producing so much electricity, it's too much for the grid. During Storm Bert, we supplied 70% of our electricity came from wind. But we couldn't use all of it. Now, what I think the conversation should look at is how do we bring prices down for homeowners? And so one of the things we should be looking at, for example, is we should get rid of the standing charge poll tax on electricity. and secondly, we should be getting rid of the green taxes.
I don't disagree with that.
The green levy on green electricity is mad. And thirdly is that we should not have the poor paying the price of the transition. Now,
which has been happening now for 2 decades.
So 3 things you could do as an MP and as a reform. First of all, get rid of the standing charge. Second of all, get rid of the green tax. And thirdly, bring in social bans so that the poor pensioner is not paying the price for the green electricity, but the rich person like Sunak, who's got an electric swimming pool, should pay higher.
Hasn't this, Ross, been the big secret of British life for the last 20 years? The extent to which those that are poorer in society have been subsidising Chinese manufacturers and foreign companies that own wind farms?
Yeah, and normally regressive tax is a hugely bad thing. No government would tolerate a hugely regressive tax. But when it comes to green issues, all that seems to go out the window. And, we'll have grants for electric cars and we'll have, poor people in their 10-year-old cars will be paying for them. And the same with energy. Now, one thing I do agree with is this marginal cost pricing of electricity in this country has to go. This is, yes.
Good Lord, I've managed to get these 2 men together and we've actually got a point of agreement. I never thought it would happen. Both regulars on this show, thank you. And energy, I promise you, over the next few years, is going to become one of the biggest political debates in this country. It could even become as big and as emotive as Brexit. Jacob Rees-Mogg joins me in the studio. You're a bit of a wind sceptic, aren't you?
Well, I am. And Donoghue says that gas is most expensive. It's not. It's only made expensive by not running gas power stations full pelt because they're kept as standby, and therefore you have...
We'd almost had agreement for a bit of the studio.
Indeed, and we need to stop it. But because gas is very cheap, and if we were fracking, it would be even cheaper. There is a huge opportunity to have lower energy costs if we give up this green fanaticism.
I think I'm with Jacob on this, or should I call him Kardashian? Because, I mean, that is clearly...
I'm just following in your footsteps. I thought the jungle was a bit too much.
I was the jungle. Reality TV with the Rees-Moggs. I'm done for this evening. Let's get the news with Honor Criswick.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers. Sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head into tomorrow, it's going to be another chilly start, turning wet and windy from the west, but elsewhere there should be plenty of hazy sunshine to go around. We've currently got high pressure sitting out to the east, clinging on before we start to see a change from the west as a frontal system moves in, bringing a squeeze in the isobars too, so fairly blustery at times across the northwest of Scotland. Any rain generally fizzling out as that system moves its way south and eastwards, bringing in some clouds, still perhaps a slight bit of rain across parts of Wales, but generally turning clearer to the north of this, a few showers to the far north of Scotland, but with clear skies we're likely to see some frost by the morning. We may even see some icy stretches just to the north and east of Scotland, so do take care if you're out and about during the early hours of Wednesday morning. But otherwise there's going to be plenty of bright sunshine around, even though it is going to be a cold start. Similar across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, chilly, but it is going to be largely dry. Perhaps a bit more cloud across central and southern areas, still a chance of some light rain across parts of Wales, mainly across hills, but for most of us it's going to be a largely dry day, plenty of sunny spells to go around. We'll eventually see a change from the west though, more clouds spilling in here, some outbreaks of rain, this turning heavy at times, just moving into parts of Northern Ireland, western parts of Scotland by the afternoon, and turning quite blustery under this cloud and rain too. So on the whole, it is going to be a fairly chilly day, largely dry, though we are going to see that change from the west. As we head into Thursday, any rain moving its way overnight will linger across the southeast for a time, turning slightly drier with a fair amount of cloud around, but it's going to be a very blustery day, and later on we'll see further outbreaks of heavy rain move their way in from the west with very strong winds at times. So it is going to be an unsettled end to the week and likely remaining unsettled as we head into the weekend. Bye for now.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the biggest, greatest Great British giveaway so far, with your chance to win a spectacular £50,000 in tax-free cash. 2025 could be amazing, with plenty of treats, holidays,